I'm sure you've probably heard of it, but Nature is the world's leading multidisciplinary scientific journal. First, here's a message from Magdalena Skipper, the editor-in-chief.
Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, distinguished fellow speakers, it is an honor to be taking part in this session entitled The Hope for the Future Biodiversity Recovery. The banner under which we are meeting today, Partnering for Growth and the Global Goals 2030, is right to put partnership first. While all eyes are on the pandemic, it is of course not the only crisis that faces us, and all global crises will require multi-sector collaborations and partnerships if they are to be solved. The pandemic has amply demonstrated that evidence-based decision-making is the only way forward worth considering. Governments that have closely followed research advice and in a timely manner have fared much better during this past year than those that did not. The same principle will apply to climate emergency, biodiversity loss, and the threat of poverty and hunger, and many others. Global crises have much in common, including that just as in the case of the pandemic, no one is really safe until everyone is safe. We would all agree that science and its practitioners from public and private sectors alike have a pivotal role in identifying solutions. But the success crucially depends on the support and encouragement to collaborate with other sectors, including the civil society. This support needs to extend to funding. Can we consider this not just an opportunity, but an obligation for funders to support and encourage science that is inclusive in terms of geography, culture, ethnicity, gender, and many other aspects of diversity? Perhaps more than ever before, now is the time for science to be transparent, for the knowledge to be shared equitably, so that all may benefit, but also importantly, so that all who have contributed receive appropriate credit. We all have a role to play in ensuring this. While pursuing answers to problems that face humanity and the planet, all too often we find ourselves going down the rabbit hole of country-level, at times nationalistic, rhetoric. Yes, global problems need local solutions, but we cannot afford to lose the global system-level perspective. And there are powerful examples of how local solutions, be it in city planning or in agriculture, solutions that involve bottom-up approaches, can successfully feed and inform policy-making on a global scale. We are all in it together. Biodiversity loss, climate change, poverty are all global problems. Fortunately, science itself sets a great example for us all. Science is a global endeavor. Pursuit of knowledge and innovation knows no boundaries, and we should not try to impose them when none exists. Science without boundaries means free movement of scientists across the globe, so that international collaborations may flourish and knowledge may be freely exchanged towards a common good. It means data sharing without undue restrictions. It means financial support for international projects. Now is a time to focus especially on rewarding partnerships and projects that from the very inception are inclusive and collaborative, that bring together disparate disciplines and geographies. Scientific journals can provide a much-needed common platform for research from across disciplines, for bringing together researchers with policymakers, leaders of the business and financial world, as well as governmental and non-governmental organizations. We are offering a common platform for discourse that breaks the silos. Let me be clear. Calls for global solutions that are equitably distributed across the globe are not new. Yet here we are, coming together towards the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, calling for common, united, equitable solutions to our global problems. Hope for the future? There is no hope for the future without science at the very heart of global solutions and without partnerships. Science can deliver, but to do so, it must not happen in a proverbial ivory tower, isolated. Yes, science must reach out, but it also needs support from all other stakeholders so it can flourish unrestricted. Thank you.
Safeguarding biodiversity is one of the key elements of climate action and environmental protection. I look forward to seeing P4G, or Partnering for Green Growth and the Global Goals 2030, deliver tangible solutions to restore biodiversity. With that in mind, we now move on to another discussion jointly organized by the Ministry of the Environment and the National Institute of Biological Resources and Nature under the theme Biodiversity Restoration as Seen by Natural Scientists.
Thank you, Tegan. So let me ask you just one question. So with the increased interest in UN SDG, particularly nowadays in our country, so sustainable finance approach have grown rapidly, as you know. So recently, market participants, including various institutional and private investors, are paying attention to ESG, environmental, social, and governance investing approach with the ambition of making their investment more sustainable and toward a low carbon transition. So the environment pillar at ESG is important in capturing the negative effect of business activity on the environment, including carbon emission, waste generation, natural resource utilization and depletion, and climate change related risk to business growth. So I have quite big question to Professor Gretchen Daly. So could you please share your insight on e-scoring as a tool for foreseeing and making business portfolio more resilient to biodiversity and climate transition risk? Thank you.
You've raised a really crucial point. So thank you very much for that. There's an enormous role for the private sector, and especially broadly in business and in finance here. We're all in this together, and if we don't engage effectively and fully and powerfully, we will all see the end of the world together. So the ESG framework is a really good framework in aspiration, but so far it has not delivered enough. You know, there's not enough participation, there's not enough visibility of the impacts and dependence of private sector entities and all of us as private consumers. There's not enough visibility of our impacts and our dependence on nature, on a stable climate system. There's not enough traceability to let us see where we're getting our consumption from, what we're purchasing, and what practices we're involved in creating the products that we're consuming. We need much more accountability to make all of this visible and hold all of us in the system accountable. So I would say that there is a lot more discussion of this, but whether we actually see change remains unclear. There's some places where there's some really compelling leadership, but not nearly enough. We need much more bold and transformative shifts in what the private sector as a whole system is doing. And I think it's too easy today to make some statements but not really do anything. So I'm a little bit worried about where we're heading, but I do feel there is a framework, and I'm hopeful that with the public sector leadership, say, of these development banks, which in the past did do a lot to destroy the planet and still are, but they are really shifting, and I'm hoping that the shift will continue. Thank you.
While I do have you here, Young-Shik, I would like to ask you a question, because although we have a global audience today, this is also a Korean event, and I think it would be remiss of me to not take advantage of your own expertise and unique perspective. So I would like you to say very, very quickly what you feel are the major concerns for biodiversity and climate, and the biggest barriers for conservation from the Korean perspective.
Thank you, Taegan. I guess that's a really difficult question for me to answer, but just upon my knowledge, according to our Ministry of Environment, Korea has decreased forest by over 2%, farmland by over 16%, and tidal flood by over 20% over the past 20 years. And accordingly, new policies are being implemented to reflect the conservation of biodiversity. So our government is supporting agriculture, forestry, and fisheries to operate in a sustainable way. So our country's national biodiversity strategic and action plan, it's called as MBSAP, is a legal strategy for the conservation of biodiversity and sustainable use of its element, so which is established every 5 years and approved by cabinet. So I think currently our country is in the process of implementing the fourth MBSAP from 2019 to 2023. So as you just mentioned, to increase public awareness, the government planned to develop a biodiversity education program to reflect in the school curriculum by year 2023. So there need to be a greater collaboration between various ministries. I mean, among different ministries could be led by our Ministry of Environment and responsible for preservation of biodiversity, as well as stronger public-private partnership to help implement our government's national biodiversity strategy and action plan. So finally, I'd like to just suggest to coordinate effort among government agency and between the government and private sector so that our country's biodiversity resource can be adequately protected as suggested by Professor Gretchen Daly. Thank you.